You work for a president who is frankly undermining our efforts to comply with the guidance that you've given us. And then the guidance that you have provided is criminally vague. We're reopening in Connecticut in 5 days, in 10 days. I mean, this guidance isn't going to be useful to us in 2 weeks. So is it this week? Is it next week? When are we going to get this expertise from the federal government?
I do anticipate this broader guidance, though, to be posted on the CDC website soon.
Soon isn't terribly helpful.
That was Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut earlier today, pushing back to the head of the CDC over its guidance about reopening states. It's a similar story that we've seen play out time after time. The president telling states that they're on their own. Ventilators, do their own tests, buy their own masks. The list, as you know, goes on and on. Let's bring in our next guest, former Senator Mary Landrieu, Democrat from Louisiana. And Senator, I thought of you recently because I remember after Katrina, you were one of the loudest voices that said the federal government owed more. In your case, it was relegated, obviously, to the people in the Gulf Coast, specifically Louisiana. But more broadly, when you've seen what's happened over the last few months, what should the expectation of the American public be of its federal government in terms of either getting everybody on the same page, giving states what they need, and also giving clarity about what we should feel comfortable in doing or be cautious about?
Well, it's been a real challenge for all the public officials in our country to have to deal with this particular White House. It's been a tremendous challenge. I can't imagine going through what we went through with Katrina or any of the storms that we've experienced along the Gulf Coast with this kind of lack of leadership, lack of clarity, and actually some pettiness in the way, of course, the president deals with some of our governors and local officials. This should not be a political issue. It's a disaster or it's a crisis, and it makes their jobs so much more difficult. So I really feel for them, all of them. It's an unprecedented situation. They don't have the support they need from the federal government. And so it's sort of each state, each county, each city on its own. And it's it's not pretty to watch for sure. And, I just hope we'll get through it.
But I think we all can be accused of sometimes getting used to the bizarre as the new normal. And I thought about Governor Whitmer in Michigan, where literally you had guys with assault weapons in the state capitol and the president tweeting against his own administration's guidelines and against the state's guidelines, go liberate yourself, Michigan, in effect. I don't know, am I missing it, or can you ever remember a time where you have the federal government against states when they're in the middle of a crisis?
No, there is no precedent like this. I mean, even though President Bush and I most certainly had our disagreements on the front end, and then as we worked together through the disaster, we became very good partners along with the governors in the Gulf Coast, both Democrats and Republicans, and fought for unprecedented aid for the Gulf Coast together, side by side. That's the way it should be. But we've seen some things that I hope we never see again. And what I think the president fails to understand is all of these governors have a vested interest in strong economies. They run just like he does every 4 years. Their people aren't happy when they're out of work, or their people aren't happy when they're sick. Their people aren't happy to go to funerals. This isn't something that they relish. But trying to understand the implications of this pandemic and doing it in a careful way that balances health and the strength of the economy. And instead of the president fighting the virus, he's fighting the governors. It just doesn't make any sense. And it's just making their job harder. And if they say anything, they get in trouble. So, of course, they can't really say anything. I can say something because I'm no longer a governor or a senator. There's not much he can do to me. But I understand why they won't be critical of them, because if they are, then their people don't get help. It puts them in a terrible situation. So I literally just pray for them every night and really hope they can keep their patience and their good sense about them and keep their people as safe and as prosperous as we all want to be.
And I think it even goes one step beyond that. And I'm curious your perspective, because you served with Mitch McConnell. Listen, at least to this point, there's been some states in the beginning that have been harder than others. Louisiana was hurt, but certainly New York, New Jersey, some of those states principally hit along the coast. Mitch McConnell basically said, and now he's labeled a blue state bailout. We can go through the economic history where New York certainly has given more than it's gotten over the years, and Kentucky has done very well for itself in terms of that. But he's the one who's introduced this idea. The president has doubled down on it. And now you've got McConnell yesterday saying that the last administration, Obama, never left a playbook. We know for a fact they did. They even left an agency that was defunded by this administration in dealing with pandemics. But literally, there was a playbook. My point is, what's McConnell doing? I get Trump doing it, but the idea of divide and conquer during a pandemic's the opposite of the United States idea. And I'm not some Pollyannish, a babe in the woods. I get the cynicism, but I've never seen anything this callously calculating in the middle of an ongoing pandemic.
I don't know why Senator McConnell said what he did, because he most certainly knows that Kentucky has been the beneficiary of many larger states that contribute in their sales tax, their income tax, and other, taxes that are paid to support his state year in and year out. He most certainly understands that. And pitting one state against the other is no way to create national unity in a time when we most certainly need national unity. Unfortunately, while President Trump has been at fault in many ways for corrupt and incompetent leadership, he couldn't get halfway down that field if he wasn't being helped every step of the way by Senator McConnell. And so it's been unfortunate to watch him be one of the chief enablers of this kind of partisan and petty and destructive politics. And so I hope that maybe he will think, more carefully about pitting red states against blue states. And look, everybody suffers the same. People's temperatures go up the same way. The funerals are held the same way, whether it's in a blue state or a red state. There's just a lot of crying, a lot of weeping, and people lose their businesses in the same exact way. They close their doors and they never open again. So it is important for us to try to stay united. And we've kind of given up on President Trump and him changing in any way, but the other governors, the other state officials and senators and House members should choose their words more carefully and be, I think, more unifying in their calls for leadership.
Senator, I appreciate the time as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone, when we come back, the president, he's been trying to, keep his tax returns from public view for years now. But the Supreme Court today heard two cases that could lead to them finally seeing the light of day. We'll discuss that after the break.